This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
And good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Mac, Jack, Doc, and Pags Saturday morning debate show. We have 2 hours of great debates, but I'm a little nervous right now because in the pre-production meetings, there was a lot of tension, a lot of discussion about a basketball game. It just happened to happen in Philadelphia, professionalism, Giannis, all sorts of things that everybody was really going at it. It was really somewhat tense. So I'm going to reluctantly bring everybody back up. The only other calm one in the room right now is Mac. But Jack and Pags, this is an amazing thing. Giannis, the big story. Jack is here. He's now good. Here's Pags. He's good. I have them separated. We're gonna start the show today by having by having Jack tell us what happened, and then the debate will begin, seeing who was right, who was wrong, and what happened in Philadelphia on the court after the game. Jack, take it away.
That's the best he sounded all day.
I'm going to tell you something. Reputation counts for a lot. No one has a better reputation in the NBA than Giannis. He's a superstar, never gets caught up in controversy, never badmouths anyone at all. His teammates love him. He shows the ultimate respect for everybody, and he deserves to get that respect back. Okay, yesterday the Bucks played the 76ers. 76ers win the game. All credit to them. Giannis is struggling a bit at the foul line, but Giannis, being the pro that he is, he has a custom. After games, he likes to go back on the court. He likes to hit 10 foul shots in a row and then leaves. And he was upset the way he shot the ball at the line yesterday. So he goes back on the court when the game is over, and he hits 7 foul shots in a row. Then one of the Sixer players, I think Montes, however you say his first name, Harrell, a bench player basically for the Sixers, grabs the ball after Giannis has made 7 in a row and saying he needs his work. Giannis shouldn't be on the court. Giannis just has 3 more foul shots in a row to go. Giannis wants the ball back. Giannis's brother, who's a bench player, by the way, for the Milwaukee Bucks. Not that many people know him. Good guy. He's talking to Harrell about it, that this is a wrong thing to do, man. Don't take the ball. So what does Harrell do? Classless thing. He leaves with the basketball. He leaves with it. So Giannis goes to the Sixer dressing room. He gets another ball from them over there. Goes back on the court. All his business and his tension with any Sixer players done. And he wants to finish just 3 more foul shots. That's it. 3 more foul shots. What's the big deal? But these workers, they put a ladder up there. Giannis asks them to move the ladder. They're not moving the ladder because they got to set up for whatever. I mean, Pags claims it's some hockey game. Flyers are so bad, the Flyers can wait. Even though they've improved this year, they're irrelevant as far as, the playoffs go. So, yeah, Giannis moves the ladder. The workers move it back. It's in Giannis's way. So Giannis moves the ladder a little harder, not meaning for the ladder to tip over. The ladder falls. He makes his 3 more foul shots in a row. He leaves, and Giannis is kind of portrayed as being some type of villain. Okay? Keep in mind, I mean, this isn't the first time there have been problems in Philadelphia. I mean, Keith Hernandez, he won't even go there to broadcast, he claims. He just doesn't like going around there. They booed Santa Claus. I mean, they
booed Santa Claus in the 80s.
But
60s, by the way. 60s. I mean, in the 60s.
Reputation means everything. Giannis has got a great reputation in the league. He should get the benefit of the doubt based on his reputation.
All right. So this seems to be the story. Pags has a completely different perspective. So, Pags, why don't you take it away?
So, he just because he decided to stink it up, like he stunk. When I saw it, he was 4 for 14, and then he continued to miss 2 more foul shots. So he at least was 4 for 16 from the line. Hey, listen, You have all the time in the world everywhere that you go. You could go with, like, they got a game tonight somewhere. They could go and he could get to that arena and he could practice his foul shooting all the time. These guys are sitting there working. You know, they got to worry about him. Once the game is over, they've got a job to do. Because Giannis decides, oh, hold on, I want to practice foul shots now because I couldn't do it earlier because I just sucked. You know, they were ahead most of the game. That's what this was. He was ahead most of the game. He started, they stunk it up in the second half, and the Sixers wind up winning it. So I feel like this was bad sportsmanship on Mr. Perfect Giannis over there. If we're talking to what's his face down there, you know what I mean? If we're talking about what Jack's got to say, you know, but it was poor sportsmanship all the way around, and then disrespect to these guys who have a job to do. Those guys, he ain't paying their paycheck. He ain't going to give them overtime if they don't get it done in time. So it's none of his business, actually. He needs to go back to his locker room, get on the bus, and go. You just lost. You just got your butts handed to you. You stunk up the joint from the free throw line. Go practice somewhere else. Or if you want to practice so bad, there's a whole bunch of courts all over the city. Go out there and practice. You ain't got it now. Now is not the time. Game's over. They got other things to do. Maybe they're setting up for a concert. I think there's a Flyers game tonight, so they had to change everything over. That means they got to take those baskets down, as per the bosses at the arena.
Pax, they could have
Nothing to do with it.
overlooked it. The other parts of the court, the workers in Philadelphia sometimes have to show more hospitality. Case in point, take when Rocky took Adrian ice skating. The workers rushing Rocky in the ice skating rink. Rocky,
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Obviously, you know, I guess you got a few punches, too many punches to the head when you were boxing, because you sound very punchy now. You know, you sound punchier than Rocky was.
Tell him about the $10 for the 10 minutes, and Balboa was given no slack. He was rushed even during his 10 minutes that he was paying for. The worker kept saying 2 minutes, 1 minute, whatever. Leave him alone for the 10 minutes at least.
You know, Rocky also didn't get any ice skates, but I think that was by his own design. But it was Thanksgiving, and you know, in fairness to the poor guy at the ice skating arena, it was Thanksgiving.
But he took the $10, Doc. He was paid.
So here's the question, because I agree that the Rocky films are true documentaries and they're not fiction. But all that being said, I'm not a big basketball guy, as you all know. So to try to unpack this whole thing with Giannis, I can see both sides of this issue here. I think both sides make sense. The game is over. The players are supposed to leave. The arena in Philadelphia has to be transformed because they're going to have another venue in there coming up probably the next day. And the workers need to get that job done. And they have families and people they have to get home to, or maybe second jobs or third jobs or whatever. So you can't hold them up. On the other hand, if the Philadelphia 76er player hadn't taken the ball from Giannis, he would have been done in about 30 seconds. I mean, how long does it take to take 3 foul shots? Boom, 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 you're out, and it's all over. So there was this other player who seems to get in the way to begin this controversy.
He wanted to make 10 in a row. He wanted to make 10 in a row. He can't make 2 in a row, let alone 10.
Well, he made 7 in a row, I guess. But
he had that. No. You know how long it took him to make 7 in a row? He hit 14 out of the next 200 after that.
The Sixer player, Harold, he wanted to get in his own work, he said. But he's a bench player. Giannis is a star. You want to know something, Pax? If it were LeBron James, you wouldn't say a word. You would probably come out with the rack.
If it was LeBron James, I'd have been louder. So don't stop putting words in my mouth there, Jack. You have no idea how I would feel. And trust me, if it was LeBron, I'd be louder. Giannis, these guys are supposed to be icons in the NBA. Well, he just looked like a fool. He looked ridiculous. And that's what I feel like that. And if it was LeBron, it'd be worse.
Bags, breathe. Take it easy, Bags. You're turning all red right now. Jack,
Jack, stop antagonizing Pags. Stop antagonizing because
Listen, I'm not.
that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to antagonize Pags and get under his skin. I know what you're trying to do because you don't like Philadelphia, and I don't either. But that's beside the point. Stop antagonizing.
Doc said it best.
Here's the question.
Giannis take 3 more foul shots and he's out of there, and we have no problems at all. What is the big deal? 3 foul shots.
Well,
of course, it's all 3 foul shots. Like I said, he went after the whole ladder incident. He shot 200 foul shots. He made 14 of them. So let's be for real. He stinks when it comes to free throws, and that's what it's all about. He could go to wherever he's at. I think they're in Cleveland or wherever they're at today, Boston or whatever, and he could take thousands of foul shots all week long.
Pags, you know Giannis is a great player. You know that, and you know normally he can hit the foul shots. And Embiid had a great game against him. I got to give him that. I mean, he blocked him and everything. But you know, I don't know, guys. I think it's not that big of a deal. It's really not. It's just an instance that happened in Philadelphia, and you know, that's all it is. So,
all right.
Yeah, if it would have happened anywhere else, it would have not even blipped.
Does Giannis typically after a game, because in its purest sense, I like this. I would want this from every one of my athletes. If I were a fan or a coach or whatever, or a teammate, that you have a bad game, you go back out onto the field or onto the court or onto the ice or whatever the sport is. And you say, listen, I wasn't doing this correctly. And before I can leave, I want to make sure I get that muscle memory. I want to make sure I go over those things so that I can sleep tonight. I can go over them again in my head and know that I'm back to where I need to be. So I like the idea. I understand the other part about getting an arena ready.
Let's talk
and all
about
that.
the last
Does he
time.
normally do this? That's my question.
Let's talk about the last time Giannis was in town. Okay, won the game.
Before that, does he normally do this after the game?
No,
is this
no, he does not.
Okay, so this is outside.
In fact, whoa! Let me tell you about the last time he was in town. All right, when they won the game, and he sat there on the court, grabbed the basketball, sat there on the court at like center court, like hugging the basketball, like Indian style at center court. You know, people got to walk around him and do all his thing, and he's sitting there and he's gloating at center court. He is an ass. He's an ass, and he was deliberate about what he did. He tried to do it. He tried to make it. He was bad sportsmanship all the way around. Bad sportsmanship. You could say he's all well respected. He's an ass, and he tries to make an ass every time he's in Philly. And this is part of what he does. So don't tell me, because I was there last time.
Making a great point. So in baseball, there is the unwritten rule that if you show up a pitcher, the next time they hit a home run or you do something, the next time he's going to drill you. It doesn't always happen, but that's sort of what happened. So what happened then maybe is the guy from Philadelphia, as we unpack this thing, is remembering Giannis's previous time sitting in the middle of the court, holding onto a basketball. And he's like, you know what? He showed us up. So while he's doing his little, I'm going to practice thing, I'm going to show him up. I'm going to take the ball and run away. Is that what happened?
That could be. I mean, there could be a lot of different reasons. Hey, listen, you're not supposed to be there anymore. Get going. I got the ball because it's our ball. We don't want you to go practice here. Go practice on your own court. Go fly home. Go practice your foul shots, and then make sure you get to the next game, because it ain't our problem anymore. You had all the opportunity in the world to do it before the game. After the game ain't the time. We got other things going on.
What gets me, Giannis has a right if he wants to gloat after a game in Philadelphia. The Philadelphia fans have a reputation of being the rudest in the league, the way they get on players, the way they taunt players, the way they harass players.
Now it's hearsay. He's got, they have such a bad reputation. That's actually not true. That's actually not true, Jack. That's actually not true at all. Actually, Nets fans are much worse. And they're much more, not only are they idiotic, but they're disrespectful all the way around.
I have to say that when Rocky fought in Philadelphia, the fans were great. They even had signs, "Go Rocky, go!" They cheered the whole time. So I mean, if we're going to get on the fans in Philadelphia for the ice skating rink guy, I mean, the fans during the Rocky fights, they were behind him
Rocky's
100%.
one of their own, Doc. He's a Philadelphian. Of course they're going to back him. I didn't hear much cheering for Apollo Creed.
Oh, you
Did
guys
you
are
in
you
Philly?
guys- you
I
guys
didn't hear
are-
much for Creed. It was all for Rocky.
you
I don't know.
guys
Creed
are-
was throwing the coins. They were cheering for Creed.
Creed transcended sport. He transcended sport. He was a star in his own right. And then kind of like
Do you know what that during that fight? You know what that was happening there at that Spectrum that day? You know why everybody was in tuxedos and
New
everything?
Year's Eve.
It was a Frank Sinatra concert.
Oh, is that true? When they filmed it?
It was a Frank Sinatra concert.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right, let's get on with the debate. This was a great way to kick it off. We got one more comment here. Morning, fellas. Stay warm wherever you are. Thank you, Chris. And
I'm already hot.
Yeah, we got a lot going on here. It's tough with this Philadelphia stuff. We got the questions, and hey, let's go to baseball. A nice calm thing. We'll talk about Boston. We'll talk about New York. We'll go back in time. Hopefully everybody's emotions settle down just a little bit. In 1986, the Mets won the World Series. There was a big game, and Mookie Wilson hit a ground ball. It went through Billy Buckner's legs. Ray Knight scored the winning run. The Mets won the game. They won the World Series the next day. So the question is posed. Let's say Billy Buckner doesn't have the ball go between his legs. He wasn't the most agile guy. Let's say he catches that ball behind first base. Mookie Wilson's hustling down the line. Would Bill Buckner have beaten Mookie Wilson to the bag anyway? Is it possible that Billy Buckner catches the ball, runs to the bag, and Mookie Wilson is safe? What do you think?
No,
Good.
no chance. Yeah, the only way the Mets win is if they get lucky. So,
Well, this isn't about lucky. We're narrowing it down to one play. You're letting your hatred of the Mets get in the way of this.
hold on. Keith Hernandez was on that team, right? Keith Hernandez was on that team.
Keith Hernandez. Well, actually, Keith Hernandez was.
He was on that team. They got lucky. They got lucky because they that's because of that one play they happened to win a World Series. That's all it is, because they would have lost the World Series right then and there had he made that play.
Wouldn't there have been a tie if they lost that game? I mean,
No,
because had they won that game, when the Mets won that game, they won in Game 7.
Had Buckner gotten the out, it would have gone into extra innings.
It was the 10th inning already, right? It was already the 10th?
It would have been tied up, okay?
Right. So people think that when Buckner
innings.
made the error, the Mets won the World Series at that moment, and that he blew the game for the Red Sox. The game was tied, and it was already in extra innings. And if he doesn't make the error, the game just goes to the next inning. It wasn't like the Red Sox were then going to win, right? The Red Sox still had to score, and that was Game 6. So the Reds still had to win the next day.
That's
right. It would have gone into extra innings. It would have been a 50-50 game, basically. But the point is whether Mookie Wilson would have beaten Bill Buckner to the base. Okay, that's the point. And initially, I thought no. Bill Buckner, would have gotten there first. But you have to consider Bill Buckner was a broken down player at that point in his career. And a lot of people said he shouldn't have even been out there in the field. But the feeling was, or the word was, the manager, John McNamara, the Red Sox, wanted Buckner on the field so he could celebrate, because he'd earned that right to be on the field when the Red Sox won the World Series. So instead of using logic and having, someone else out there, he had Buckner out there. But had Buckner fielded the ball, would Wilson have beaten him? I kind of would have. If push comes to shove, I'm going to still say no, even though I'm not as firm as I was before, because I defer to Mookie Wilson. Mookie Wilson's never fully answered that question, okay? Now, he could have gotten Bill Buckner off the hook to an extent, Mookie Wilson, if he said, nah, it wouldn't have mattered. Even if he fielded it, I was going to beat him to the base. And that would have taken certain pressure off Buckner, but Wilson never quite said that. He was always vague about it.
Is Bill Buckner, is he in the Hall of Fame?
No, he had over 2,700 hits for his career.
Right.
And
And he
you
was
could argue that he's a borderline Hall of Famer.
and
perhaps.
didn't he play? Didn't he play didn't he play in the outfield? Was he in the
In the
Yeah,
all
beginning
well,
of his
yeah.
career, I believe he did. Yes, I think he was a left fielder, and I think he played some right field when he was
Yeah.
on the Dodgers.
So I mean, he still has a chance to get into the Hall of Fame, I would think.
You never know with a
And
betting.
wasn't the
really.
pitcher also going to cover? I mean, the pitcher's probably also going to cover at that play. That's an automatic thing. Like, hey,
It was Bob
this is-
Stanley was the pitcher, and he was slow as molasses. He wasn't going to get to the base. Buckner was going to have to step on the base on his own. I got to tell you about a funny story about your guy Keith Hernandez in that game, Pax, and whether you realize it or not. Hernandez got up that inning. He flew out, and he went back to the dugout. He didn't want to watch the Red Sox celebrating on the Mets field. So he hung out in the locker room figuring it was all over. And
Yeah.
he was joined by a couple of other guys. And then before you know it, the Mets started putting
No,
together.
every other Met was there. It was just him by himself because he's not a team guy. He's just a guy. He's a blowhard who thinks that he's so much better than he was. He's
No,
he's
he was
nothing.
being
He's
respectful.
all he is is a blowhard
no.
now. Hey, listen, how well did the Mets do? Where did our Phillies end up? Wah, 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 wah. You could say that the demise began because of him, because really the Mets went into a swoon after he said, well, I don't want to go to Philly because of that. So maybe it was his fault that the Mets started to stink up the joint, because maybe they took on his personality because he's a loser. That's what happens.
No. You see, you're getting it wrong again. What Hernandez said, the Phillies are a decent team. He doesn't hold that against him. He says they don't play baseball the way it should be played. In other words.
Well, no, yeah, because he knows it only through steroids. Hey, I have no idea what anybody's shooting into my muscles. No clue whatsoever.
He's in the St. Louis Cardinals Hall of Fame. He had his number retired by the Mets. I mean, he's been given the ultimate honor.
Yeah, see what happens with steroids. See what happens. It makes you such a good player.
I don't believe there's any steroids around Keith Hernandez.
Speaking of that,
yes, there is. Oh, there is. He went and he testified to Congress and then had to retract it all because he said, well, I had no idea what they were shooting into my muscles.
I don't think it was steroids. I think
so.
it was other drug use. It was at the time. But getting off that for a second, and it's kind of linked a little. There's this new Hall of Fame committee, guys. I heard a few weeks ago that came out. I'm kind of mixed up. Maybe, Doc, you could clarify it, because I know Bonds is eligible. Clemens is eligible for that.
Yes.
So who votes on that? And how can these guys not be voted in if they're on some type of ballot? I don't get it.
All right. So basically, there are two different ways to get into the Baseball Hall of Fame. There is the traditional way, which is you are on the Baseball Writers Association of America. You're on their ballot. I think it used to be 15 years. It's now 10 years. And on that ballot, all of the writers who reach a certain standard are able to vote. And you need to get 75% of the votes in order to get into the Hall of Fame. So Clemens, Bonds, all those guys have been on the ballot for 10 years and they did not get in.
Right.
Then the other avenue to get in is they have these other various veterans committees. Part of the problem with the Baseball Hall of Fame is the fact that the various committees change all the time and they keep changing the rules and how they vote. This is one of the things that takes away the continuity of a sport. But anyway, the Veterans Committee that is up right now, which they're going to announce their decision on December 4th, I believe. So it's going to be just in a couple of weeks. That committee is the modern day players who haven't quite made it to the Hall of Fame yet. So they picked 8 guys, I believe. Palmeiro, Bonds, Clemens, Dale Murphy, Fred McGriff, Don Mattingly, Albert Bell. I might have missed somebody in there. Kurt Schilling. No, Hernandez isn't on there.
He isn't on there?
He is not on there.
Because he's not worthy.
That's a different argument. That's a different question. But the idea is Next year, it'll be managers and umpires and executives or whatever. And then the year after, I think it becomes old timers, players. And then this group doesn't then get another chance for like 3 or 4 or 5 years again. And then they have to pick from the players who aren't in the Hall of Fame from the modern era, which of the guys they'll put on the ballot for that next round. So really the question is, they didn't make it through the baseball writers. Will they make it through this next committee? And the committee, I believe, is made up of, other dignitaries and former players and things like that. So it's a smaller group, but I think the 75% standard still remains. So that's really the question.
Okay, Doc.
Okay, I kind of wonder who's going to get in from that group. I wonder, does Mattingly have a chance of getting in? I would think, Bonds and Clemens, unless the steroid issue is held against them with that committee.
Right. So I actually, knowing you were leaving early, I started jotting down some other questions that we would talk about possibly later in the show. And I actually wrote the Hall of Fame. There's a New York guy, Mattingly, who's on there. And there's a Philadelphia guy, spent the last part of his career in Philly, Dale Murphy. That's the other guy. I think I didn't say his name. Who are both borderline Hall of Famers. And the question is, do either of them get in? So I'll just go on record here and make this grand prediction. I think there's still a lot of baggage around Palmeiro and Schilling and Clemens and Bonds. And I think it'll be very hard for any one of them or even any two of them to get the required votes in order to get in, especially since they just got off the other ballot. So then you look at the other guys. There are 3 basically really good guys that are on the ballot. Good guys as good people who have been respected in the game, and nobody's ever accused any of them of cheating. Fred McGriff, Dale Murphy, and Don Mattingly. And my gut is that 1 or 2 of those guys will probably get in. And there's something in my mind that says that somehow, even though I don't believe and I love Don Mattingly, even though I don't believe he's really good enough, I don't think he quite reached that standard. Somehow I see Don Mattingly sneaking in, and I can also see Fred McGriff sneaking in because they're going to avoid voting for the controversial guys, and then it becomes between those couple other guys. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
If I can only vote for one, and this should be revealing who gets in, I would vote for Fred McGriff. I think he's waited longer. He's been deprived longer. He was 7 home runs short of 500, and the talk all along at that time was 500 homers is just about an automatic Hall of Fame induction at that time. And I think McGriff had the misfortune not to play in New York. Getting traded away, was actually a Yankee a while. So my feeling is it would be McGriff. And Mattingly hasn't even been close in the past on the ballot. So why should he jump all the way up? Maybe ultimately. But why doesn't Sammy Sosa get any love on these things? Was it the cork in the bat? He had a phenomenal career.
Mac, do you have any thoughts on the Hall of Fame? Any of those guys? Do you think any of them get in?
Yeah, listen, I think it's time that we not forget, but that we understand that this is what was going on back then. The steroids, I don't even think they were illegal in the beginning. That steroids are part of baseball and part of that era, and that we shouldn't hold it against the best players in baseball at that time were Barry Bonds and Sammy Sosa and players like that. And I think it's up to the fans. We'll put them in the Hall of Fame, as I've said before, and let the fans decide. Let them look at it and let them decide whether they were truly great or it was the steroids.
And they were great before they supposedly used steroids. They were great players. They already were great. What do you think, Pags?
If you're saying that this group is made up of players, that's what makes up the crux of this group, then I think that you're going to see Bonds get in, and I think you're going to see McGwire get in. Those are the people that are going to wind up getting in. Clemens. I think the players have a much better appreciation than the writers do. The writers are all holier than thou, and that's what's bothered me about the Hall of Very Good. of baseball. It's not a Hall of Fame anymore. It's the Hall of Very Good, because we're going to keep people out because they're idiots, or because they cheated back then when baseball absolutely needed it because of that strike. Nobody was going to games. It wasn't until that home runs, so all those home runs, that everybody started to get back on board with baseball. So yes, baseball put this to them. They knew that these guys were on steroids. Hell, Lenny Dykstra said out loud during the playoff run in '93, he said out loud when somebody asked him, "Hey, what makes you guys so good out there, so good out there in the field?" And he said straight out, "It's good vitamins." Said straight out to the camera that he was taking steroids. That's how blatant it was. And truth of the matter is that, I mean, that's the problem here. Everybody wants to have this holier than thou. These writers who never batted one at bat in baseball ever can talk about, oh, well, I'm in charge here. I have control because I did all this writing. Blah, blah, bull. It's all bull. That's why I think players actually do the right thing and they get the guys in who are supposed to get into the Hall of Fame.
It wasn't the Hall of Fame set up just for, the superstars, the Ruth, the Garricks, people like that. It wasn't set up for players that are good, but that are very good.
If Fred McGriff and Mattingly got in, both of them were good players. They were good players, but this isn't the Hall of Good. This is the Hall of Fame.
Right, and that's what it was.
The thing about Mattingly is Mattingly was a great player, and then he became a good player. For a period of time, Mattingly was great. There was no doubt about that. He was the best player in baseball for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Right. But the problem is, was his career long enough? And I don't believe it was. Listen, and no one loves Mattingly more than me. I like Don Mattingly's, in that super rarefied air as far as my fandom goes, one of my favorite players of all time. I don't think he quite played long enough and performed well enough to get into the Hall of Fame. I sort of, again, see that it's sort of like the ricochet vote. Well, we can't vote for the guys who have so much controversy around them. And again, there's other guys in the Hall of Fame who have that same controversy. David Ortiz got in last year. There's managers, we've gone over this, who are in the Hall of Fame who managed the steroid guys, which means they wouldn't have supposedly won as many games if they didn't have those guys on their team. The commissioner of that whole era is in. So how do you keep the players who supposedly used out? So I would just put them all in at this point. It's just silly. And the quicker they go in, the quicker the controversy goes away. We don't have to hear about it anymore. Right, Mac? Right, Jack?
Yeah, I think popularity has a lot to do with it. I'll throw one name at you who's not even considered. And
Keith Hernandez.
No. If he was,
because he's not very popular.
If the perception of him was being a really good guy who was popular with the press, they'd be talking him up. Gary Sheffield. He hit over 500 homers. Shouldn't he at least be seriously considered? No one mentions his name.
He was on the ballot, and he made it for 10 years on the ballot, and he didn't make it. And
he hardly got any votes.
Yeah, well, that's the same thing about Gary Sheffield. There was the question, he used the cream or whatever, and he admitted to do that at one point. He also wasn't a guy who remained on any club for any significant amount of time. He seemed to wear out his welcome and bounce around a lot. And I think when another guy like that was, to a certain extent, was Dick Allen, right? Who a lot of people feel as well.
Never voted for ever.
He was a guy, a lot of people feel he's Hall of Fame worthy, but he bounced around from a number of different teams for whatever reasons. And I think sometimes writers look at that kind of stuff and they say, well, why didn't this guy stick around? Why do teams keep getting rid of him?
There's something about these Philly guys. Dick Allen was the Terrell Owens of baseball. I mean, he was just very, very difficult. There's something about these Philly guys. They get to Philadelphia. I mean, you don't get, for every Jalen Hurts, who's a gentleman there, you get these Philadelphia players who just don't do the right thing. Like Allen Iverson was a lightning rod. You could start naming them one after the other. Something about going to Philly. I mean, they have to have a little more discipline. They're a little more structure in Philadelphia.
Yeah, Pax, they do.
Wasn't there a guy played defense for the Eagles who was a preacher? I think he's
Reggie
a
White.
Hall of
Reggie
Famer.
White. No. Well, they had the Jet defensive captain when they won the Super Bowl was a lightning rod, but he was from Philadelphia, Johnny Sample. I mean, you get him all the time. There's dissension, arguing. They're always arguing in Philadelphia. They even get on a gentleman like Doc Rivers, who's a gentleman. Everyone's attacking him because he likes to go about doing it right. That's why Joe Girardi didn't last.
And you know what they say about New York?
How does
Bap, bap,
manage-
bap, bap, bap. All they do is yap, 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 yap. They try to poke the bear. They hate us because they ain't us. And that's really what it comes down to. Because we show the passion. We bring it every play of every game.
No.
And you guys can only talk about it like that. You
Hey.
guys stink out loud. And that's
Hey.
really what happens.
Hey, don't include me in that, Pags. Don't include me in that. I
Yeah,
give.
and I
No,
think,
no,
I think, I
it's
think, I
Brooklyn
think Mac and
people.
I have been nothing but respectful.
Yes.
Well,
I mean, I feel. Listen. I think Philly is a lunch bucket team. They're always out there. They're giving it everything they got. And the fans love them. So I mean, listen. Being a Giant fan, sometimes I'm mad at the Giants the way they turn against the Giants, whether they're winning or losing. So.
but you're still picking the Giants to beat out the Eagles for the division.
Of
Matt.
course, I'm a Giants fan. Of course, I would have picked them. Bags don't believe me, but
All right, so let's talk football. Carson Wentz is the quarterback on the Washington Commanders, and it seems as though he is going to be the guy starting this week. And
no,
he was out
not
for a number of
starting.
weeks.
he's
What's
not
that?
He's not starting.
Oh, I thought I was checking that yesterday. I thought he was.
No,
No,
So
he
the-
is not starting.
Oh,
Is he healthy enough to start Pags?
So I don't know that answer because I don't follow Washington that strongly. But my thought is that he's probably, if he's not ready to start, he's definitely could be the backup there, and he's probably good enough to play. I think that they are holding him back specifically. It's. I'm not sure how Washington plays in this game. I think that they were over emotional last game. I think that they have a comeback down to earth day on Sunday. So it's possible that what happens is if it happens like that and Heineke is unable to lead this team to a victory that they are favored in, which I don't think that I'm not sure that they should be, they'll go back to Wentz that following week.
so who do we believe? Let's make it the question that way. Is the starting quarterback for the Washington Commanders at the end of the season?
That's the key point. By the end of the season, for Wentz not to be the starting quarterback, assuming everyone is healthy, that means Heineke's going to have to continue winning with Washington. And Heineke's not a new kid on the block. He was with Washington last year. They knew what they had with Heineke. He played a lot.
And he was really 2 plays away from beating Tom Brady when Tom Brady won the Super Bowl with Tampa Bay. So I mean, that's where he came onto the scene. I remember pulling for Washington when he did that Superman leap to get into the end zone. So I mean, he's been there for a few years. I mean, you could tell he doesn't have all the tools of the quarterback, but he does have the fire, and they seem to. The one thing that I could say about teams that have had Carson Wentz is that the backup seems to be able to strengthen the bond of the rest of the team. And I don't know why it is so against Carson every time, but it seems that everywhere he goes, the same exact situation occurs. It's history repeating itself over and over and over again. And it seems very odd that they don't want him. They would rather go with somebody who is talented. And it's becoming a common theme here. My thought is that he will not be with Washington next year, that they will cut him and they'll eat the rest of his salary, and that he will be a backup somewhere. And I think he'll actually come out much better as a backup, because when he gets in there and actually starts to play, I think the humbleness of being the backup is kind of what he needs right now, and could possibly become a starter later on. But I think he's got to be a backup somewhere. I think he's still good enough, and he's got too much talent to not be a backup somewhere.
What
But
do
I
you
think he'll
Mac?
get his chance again.
And listen. Wentz has a history of being all by himself in the locker room. He has a history of wanting to not be with the guys. He's the kind of person that stays to himself, and he doesn't include his players, his team in his thoughts. And I think that the same thing has happened here with Washington. Heineke has the locker room. They're all, he's a good guy. He's a leader. They love this guy in Washington. I think Rivera likes him a lot more than Wentz. And I don't know if he'll ever be a starter. I think he's getting up there in age, and I don't think by the time he's done playing with Washington he'll ever be a starter again. I think he'll be on a team maybe, but I think this is just a pattern of the history of what Wentz is. We had discussions about, Wentz a long time ago with a reporter, and it just seems that this guy has some kind of problem, showing his emotions. He's never emotional. I don't ever see him, during a game or even when he was with the Eagles, getting pumped up after he threw a touchdown, calling over the players and pumping them up. He just likes to be by himself.
Interesting. What do you think, Jack?
You got to remember something. Ron Rivera, the Commanders coach, he was Heineke's coach last year. So I don't want to hear that, he likes Heineke more than he likes Wentz. They wouldn't have gotten Wentz if Rivera didn't want him. But the thing is, the Commanders have won 4 of their last 5. They have momentum going. Heineke's played fairly well. To go back to Wentz at this moment is risky because if he doesn't play well, you kind of break up the team's momentum. So they're going to keep going with Heineke. But the question is, by the end of the season, is Wentz going to be the starter? If you believe Heineke can keep this up and the Commanders can continue this run throughout the rest of the year, then the answer is no. Wentz isn't going to be the starter. But if you think Heineke might stumble along the way, they're going to go back to Wentz. Okay. I say this in boxing about certain fighters. They score one big win in their career and they have a gold card, meaning they're given opportunity after opportunity. They keep getting beaten, but everyone remembers their one big win. Like, I'll give you a name, like Andy Ruiz beat Anthony Joshua, upset in one fight. So Andy Ruiz is always going to get big fights, always going to get beaten in the big fights going forward, but they're going to remember when he beat Anthony Joshua. Carson Wentz, the NFL coaches, GMs are going to remember how good he was with the Eagles when he came up. He was elite for a couple of years, and they're going to keep thinking they could straighten him out, and they can get quite a bargain in Carson Wentz if he could return to being the player he was. And Rivera's not the last coach who's going to believe that. Someone else is going to believe that. And so I think before Washington moves on from Carson Wentz, they're going to want to be sure. I don't think they're sure at this point. They're going to want a little more of a body of work, watch him mess up a little more. Not that they want that, of course, with their team before they move on from him. So I think by the end of the year, Wentz is actually going to be the starter because I don't think Heineke is going to sustain what he's done, quite the way he has. And they're going to go back to Wentz by the end of the year.
That's not happening.
All right, so I'm going to call a wildcat here. We're calling an audible. And there is a quarterback in the NFL who came out of nowhere, and he's starting, and he's leading his team to a lot of victories. And just a number of years ago, he was forgotten about, and it's Geno Smith, who when he was on the Jets was terrible. Why is Geno Smith having so much success as an older guy in Seattle?
Yeah, I can answer that. If you just look, he has DK Metcalf and Gary Lockett, 2 great receivers. Walker's a running back. They drafted couple of outstanding, offensive linemen. They knocked it out of the park in the draft, plus had a couple of outstanding established wide receivers. It's rare. Geno Smith has been given a lot of time to throw this year because he's gotten blocking, which most quarterbacks don't have, and he has the weapons on top of it. And he's shown he can manage a game. He's had a great year, Geno Smith, but he's not your big-time answer going forward, not at all. But he's shown he could get it done. But listen, just reserve judgment on Seattle. The season has a while to go. You especially should know that, Doc. Seattle's at the 15-mile mark of the marathon, looking really good. Let's wait till they get a few more miles into it, okay?
I think there's more reasons than Jack gave why Geno Smith is so good this year. He's got experience now. He's been in the league for a while. He's been with some great quarterbacks. He knows how to read defenses now, where he didn't in the pack before he just run with the ball after the first read. And he is mobile now. He is a mobile quarterback. So if the receivers aren't open, the line is not blocking well, he can pick up that first down. So I think there's a lot of reasons why Geno Smith is having success this year. They will make the playoffs, and they won't go far, and that's for sure.
Any other thoughts there, Pags?
So to just expand a little bit more, and I'm not a big fan of the coach, but he's actually done a great job this year. Like where he was supposed to be done and washed up, and this was just a lame duck season. He's kind of taken that and put the chip on his shoulder. He has been coaching great games. And I think that there's something to be said for that. I mean, I feel that and I look at, what they were last year in comparison to what they are this year. And there's a very similar trajectory that's going on right now with the Giants in comparison to where they were last year to where they were this year. And I attribute both of those situations to really good coaching, to the coaching actually putting his players in positions to succeed. And he's done that with Geno Smith. Yeah. And that's really, amongst everything else. Hey, listen, we can't rely on Geno Smith to throw a 60-yard bomb. We know that. We know that he's not going to be able to do that. So if we're going to do long throws, we're going to make sure they go to Metcalf where he's got a 50-50 chance, and we trust that our 50% is better than their 50%. And that's what he has been doing. And really, Geno has lapped that all up. He has really taken that ball and ran with it. And I think that's part of the reason why they're 6-4. Yeah. And they're doing really well. I mean, like I said, I thought that the West was going to stink all the way around. So it just shows that Pete Carroll has said, "Yep, I agree with you, and I think I could be better." And he's out coaching all of the teams that he's beating.
Which is interesting because that's a great segue to the next question. Also interesting is Pete Carroll and Geno Smith, cast-offs from the Jets. The question is, who is the most underrated coach in the NFL? Could it be Pete Carroll? Is it somebody else? Who do you think? Why don't we start with Mac?
I mean, I guess you could put Pete Carroll in there. I think though it's the Philadelphia Eagle head coach, Sirianni. It's his first year. A lot of people didn't think the Eagles the second year, sorry, Pags. A lot of people didn't think that the Eagles could continue with the success they've had. I mean, they've shook up the team a lot. He's had to make them come together, the free agents and the young players. And he's done an outstanding job. I think he's did a great job mixing in the run with the pass. He's got a lot of he's got probably two of the best receivers in football on one team. So I think he's done an outstanding job for the Eagles. And, even though I hate to admit it, because he is an Eagles coach, I think he's really done a great job over there.
Who wants to go next?
I'll say Mike Vrabel of the Tennessee Titans. I mean, when you talk about the elite coaches in the NFL, no one mentions his name. But look what he even did last year. Derrick Henry at midseason goes down with an injury. Derrick Henry to the Tennessee Titans is basically what Saquon Barkley is to the Giants this year. Yet despite the loss of Derrick Henry, they continued to win and they secured the best record in the AFC. I mean, they didn't quite get it done in the playoffs. Take Ryan Tannehill. People forget Ryan Tannehill was drafted number 8 overall by the Miami Dolphins. He struggled as a Dolphin. He struggled, but when he came to the Titans, Grable straightened him out, and he became a pretty good quarterback. But he's not one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Yet the Titans win. Look at their resiliency. They lose their first 2 games this year. And then they've won 7 of their last 8, and the one loss was in overtime to the Chiefs when Malik Willis was quarterbacking. Imagine that in Kansas City with Malik Willis, a very raw quarterback who they had to protect. Basically, he's went head-to-head with his mentor. Grable was a former Patriot player. He goes head-to-head with Bill Belichick in the playoffs. He beats Belichick in the playoffs. I mean, he underrated coach. I mean, when we talk about the top coaches in the NFL, for whatever reason, his name never comes up. It just slips under the radar. We recognize the Titans as being a good team, but we never quite put the spotlight on their coach.
Pags?
Somehow I knew he was going to say Mike Vrabel. He's got a thing for Mike Vrabel over there. So I would say this year isn't indicative of the name that I'm going to say, and I'm not a big fan of his specifically, but Mike Tomlin. Tomlin has had longevity of success, and that has really gone under the radar, mostly because he's a great motivator. Like even right now, this team is being 3-6. I mean, I know that they're not having the best of seasons, but when they need the win, and he wants that win, he's able to coach them to that win. And I would say that he's probably the best rah-rah delegator that there is in the NFL. I don't think that he is an amazing coach. I think that he has the right people around him, and Pittsburgh in general, especially with their coach, have always been able to put their personnel, again, I'm talking about above the field, really, the coaching staff and everything has always picked the right personnel to be able to delegate the authority to, so that they can make sure that their team is ready. Now, they don't have all the pieces in place this year because obviously the loss of Ben Roethlisberger and a couple of spots on their defense. When you lose Watt to an injury all season long, well, now all of a sudden that defense is soft. Watt changes the perception of that entire defense and would probably account for 2 wins. That being the case up to this point. So they would be more like 5-4 rather than 3-6. But to answer your question, underrated coach, Mike Tomlin.
Well, but Pags, the word is underrated. If you speak to the majority of people, they would place Tomlin maybe one of the top 5 coaches in the NFL. That's not underrated. Underrated is someone who the vast majority of football experts maybe wouldn't put all the way towards the top. Because he's on your list, that makes him automatically he's not underrated. Everyone recognizes he's a Super Bowl winning coach in the past. He's never had a losing record. Everyone recognizes he's a heck of a coach. We want to hear who's underrated. Matt came up with a really good answer. Nick Sirianni. Okay, underrated. That's the thing.
I'll give you one. How about Robert Saleh of the Jets? The Jets are overperforming, I believe, by a wide margin. They're doing an unbelievable job, and it's only his second year, and his quarterback hasn't been on the team all year. In the beginning of the year, he was hurt. And somehow the Jets keep coming up with big win after big win. They're playing unbelievable football. And even when they started winning, And again, I don't listen to a lot of talk radio. Just sometimes when I'm in my car, every now and again, you hear just some noise. And there were people saying, should he be fired? Earlier this year, they were talking about, should he be fired? It's only his second year. Are you sold on Robert Saleh yet? And I think the Jets are doing great. They're playing great football. And this is a guy that just a couple of months ago, they were talking about maybe he doesn't even last the season. So I think he is definitely underrated.
I don't know if he's underrated, Doc, because he was a great defensive coordinator with San Francisco, built a great defense over there. All the players know him. They think that he's one of the best coaches in the league. They all respect him. All the other coaches respect him. As a head coach, maybe he's underrated, but as a coach in general, he's not.
Fair enough point. Hey, my dear friends, it looks like we're just about at the top of the hour. What we'll do is we'll do a couple of commercials. Then we'll come back. After the commercials, I will step out. We'll do some basketball talk. I'll come back, and then Jack will step out. And then the Philly sports guy, Mac, and I will finish the show for you all. But right now, we're going to take a commercial break, and we're going to start with our old friend, Bob Uecker.
You know, one of the best things about being an ex-big leaguer is getting freebies to the game. Call the front office, bingo. And once these fans recognize me, I probably won't even have to pay for my light beer from Miller. Down it, I love them. These fans know I drink light because it's less filling and it tastes great. Good seats, huh?
You're in the wrong seat, buddy. Come on.
Oh, I must be in the front row.
Come on.
Light beer from Miller. Everything you always wanted in a beer and less.
Good seats, hey, buddy. He missed the tag. He missed the tag.
Supporting the needs of our veterans. That's the goal of all of us at Team AmVets. Like Mitch, Carlos, and Kevin from our Welcome Home team that brings furniture to our vets.
We are Team AmVets.
Or Linda from our thrift stores who brings you great bargains every day.
I am Team AmVets.
And John, who picks up your thrift store donations that support California veterans programs.
I am Team AmVets.
Visit our website or Team AmVets thrift store to donate or shop today.
Join the team!
You can see right now, without LeBron, Lakers are struggling.
Let me tell you about a team I hate, all right? I know the Dallas Cowboys fan is here, so I had to make sure he knew how much I hate this team.
I'm ready. I've often said that the people who run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it.
I'm from Brooklyn. I don't have a problem saying it to his face. Oh, I'm from Brooklyn. Hey, get any...
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you, your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Mr. Green? Mr. Green?
Yeah.
You need any help?
Mm-mm.
I just want you to know, I think you're the best ever.
Yeah, sure.
Want my Coke? It's okay, you can have it.
No.
Really, you can have it.
Okay.
A Coke and a smile makes me feel good. Makes me feel nice.
Be around.
That's the way it should be. I like to see
Hey, kid.
the whole world smiling with me. Coca-Cola as life. Have a Coke and
Thanks, Mean Joe.
smile.
I could watch that commercial 5 million times. That is the absolute. We ought to do what's the greatest commercial in sports history. I think we'll all agree. Welcome back to the Mac, Jack, Philly sports guy, and Doc Saturday debate show. We've had a lot of great debates so far. Of course, I don't know much about basketball, and so there's a great question coming up right now about the New York Knicks. And if the Knicks decide to fire Coach Tibbs by the end of the year, who would be the best person to replace him? We'll start with whoever wants to go first on that one. Who would like to grab that one to start? Who would be the best?
I'll grab that. I don't see why there should even be a discussion. It's on the debate show because it's on the news that this West Coast trip the Knicks are on, and they lost to Golden State last night, that if the Knicks fare poorly, maybe Coach Tibbs is going to be on the hot seat. For what? I mean, the year before last, they overachieved. They were 4th seed. He's getting the most he can out of the talent. He's a pretty good disciplinarian. You can only do so much with an NBA team after a while. The Knicks aren't bad. I mean, they're at 500 or so right now, and that's about the type of team that they're ultimately going to be. I mean, their ceiling in all probability is to be maybe a play-in team, maybe survive the play-in tournament and then become a playoff team. And they're not going to last long in the playoffs if they get there. I don't know what people expect out of the Knicks, what they expect out of Coach Tibbs. I mean, he's been a head coach in other places, in Minnesota, Chicago. He's been a major assistant with some other big-time coaches. He knows the game. But if the Knicks are to move on from Coach Tibbs, we hear all these candidates being out there. We hear, nonsense I hear in the news like Stephen A. Mark Jackson. What a colossal mistake that would be. Mark Jackson? I mean, he's fortunate to have his analyst's job. He should work on that a little more and show a little more spark. Not that Mark Jackson doesn't know the game, but he's not quite the answer there. I mean, I think the ideal guy would be a coach the Nets let go, who's now an assistant coach, the first assistant with the Warriors, Kenny Atkinson. Now you could say, well, the Warriors are doing poorly this year with Atkinson. Well, he was with them last year and they won the NBA title. He was very successful with the Nets, Kenny Atkinson, but they let him go because Kyrie and Kevin Durant reportedly weren't happy with him. Good gosh. So they let Kenny Atkinson go, and those guys got what they deserved in Steve Nash. Okay, poetic justice there. Kenny Atkinson deserves to be back as a head coach. The Charlotte Bobcats tried to hire him back. He was going to take that job, but at the last moment decided he'd stick with Golden State when Steve Kerr was promoting him to first assistant. But he would be the ideal guy to be the New York Knicks head coach if Coach Tibbs, for whatever reason, was let go or resigned, because Kenny Atkinson is something that most coaches aren't in these days in the NBA. He's a disciplinarian.
Well, we've had a few comments. Carlos, of course, has been saying fire Tibbs since he's been there. Chris Lentz says Patrick Ewing. I don't think that's a good idea.
Patrick Ewing's been great with Georgetown, isn't he?
Yeah, I know. So listen, I think Atkinson would be good if Tibbs goes. I like Tibbs myself. Atkinson works with young players. He's unfortunate with the Nets. They just didn't want a person there to tell them what to do, and of course that's the way Kyrie Irving is anyway. So I agree with you, Jack. I think Atkinson would be a good pickup if Tibbs, does get fired. What do you think, Bags?
I think the Knicks should trade for Doc Rivers. We'll take a first round pick, and they can have Doc Rivers, and we will figure out who we're going to get.
Did you say you'd give the Knicks a first round pick to take Doc Rivers off your hands? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Except that would be in 2028, and we'd have to do, it would be one of those switches of who gets the better first round pick. Yeah. Yes. So I would do it that way. But just to be able, because I'm not a fan of the way Doc has been coaching. I think that, it makes me laugh. I think that Embiid is coaching this team. I mean, I feel like it all stems off of Embiid completely. And I don't know. I wish I had better knowledge of basketball, because I think ultimately as a fan, and I see what's happening, I'm not a fan of things that Doc Rivers does. I think that he does bring some stuff, but I don't think he brings enough to the table. And I think that there are better coaches out there. I think that if the game comes down to coaching, he gets out-coached all the time. So I don't know, but I don't know anything well enough to be able to say who I'd want in return for, if Doc Rivers was on the hot seat. So I can't speak intelligently about the Knicks in the same breath, because I just don't know.
Well, Carlos brought up a person that coached the Knicks before and the Lakers. He said he was a good coach. Come on, Carlos. I mean, you're talking Pat Riley was a great coach. And he again is
not going to leave Miami.
No, I know that. We're playing make believe, so let's play make believe.
No, we're playing reality here. Not fantasy.
I'm just saying. Pat Riley was a great coach. He did coach the Knicks, and he did a great job with them, especially with the teams he had. He didn't have great teams. He had Patrick Ewing, and that was.
But that's got nothing to do with it. I could say Red Auerbach. Bring him he would be ideal for them. That's not the question. Who realistically would be available to coach the Knicks? Who would take the job if Tibbs is let go? I mean, that's the question. Two other names come to mind. Okay, and I'm not saying they'd necessarily be great names, but they're worth a thought. David Blatt, who coached the Cavaliers, who was let go with a 30-11 record because LeBron didn't like him, perhaps. There was some talk of that. And then he coached overseas. He coached, in the European League, in Israel, blah, blah, blah. But he had he had like a season and a half in the NBA. He went to the finals one year. The next year was let go with a 30-11 record. And also, this is a name, Becky Hammond. She's a woman. She certainly, she was Coach Pop at San Antonio, his assistant there for a while. She's had a great run with the WNBA because she's a woman. That seems to perhaps be working against her.
Yeah, Jack. I mean, I think that would be more of a gimmick than hiring her as a coach. I mean, she's okay. She's pretty good. But I don't think they're going to be hiring her to coach the Knicks. I really don't.
But no, I'm saying she'd be a viable candidate. She was Coach Pop's assistant at San Antonio. And she had a great background in the WNBA and coaching. Why should men be allowed to coach WNBA teams? Or women's soccer teams, where women, if they coach a men's team, it's kind of looked at, everyone like backs off, like it's highly unusual. It shouldn't be that way. Coaching is coaching. Playing the game is playing the game. It's fundamentals, hustle, this and that. It's basically the same.
Well, you still gotta associate yourself with players. And let's face it, it's hard for a man to listen to a woman, right?
They listen to their mothers, So come on, the mother presence, a lot of the NBA.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but you wouldn't have your mother coach you.
No.
You wouldn't have your mother coach you.
Let me tell you, and if someone didn't listen to the coach, same principles apply. If it's a woman coach, they're not listening to her. She disciplines him. She sits him on the bench. Let him sulk. They'll come around. It's a question of respect, how you're dealing with some. Look, they've had women teachers, let's put it another way, who've disciplined them in the classroom, okay? If they've ever acted up. Same principle. Does Becky Hammond know the game well enough?
But you brought
the answer would probably be absolutely yes.
You just brought up teachers, Jack. I wasn't scared of a female teacher. I listened to a male teacher because he's He's male. I would listen to him, but not as much to a female teacher. It's just the way it is.
No kidding, man.
Yeah, and I think it's a matter of the disrespect level that would come from the players. I think the players run the NBA, the inmates run the asylum, and I think that would be the hardest part from that. Like I wouldn't trust that the players would do right by the coach if it was a female coach.
There's female referees in the NBA. I think there's one or two or whatever. And I don't know the amount. I shouldn't say that. And they have to listen to the calls. They could complain all they want. Okay. But if you're in a position of authority, someone else has to listen. It could be in any walk of life. I mean, if it's a police officer and they tell someone something, whether it's a man or woman, you can't distinguish, well, I'm going to listen to the male police officer more than I will the woman one. I mean, it's what it is. I mean, in a position of authority. It depends how good a disciplinarian Becky Hammon would be. By all accounts, she's pretty good in all facets.
That's apples and oranges, though. That's apples and oranges, Jack. You're talking about a policewoman compared to an NBA coach. You disrespect a police officer, you go to jail. You disrespect a female coach in the NBA. What do you get suspended or fined?
You get sent to the end of the bench. If the coach, you let the coach know you're the disciplinarian. They don't listen to you. You bench them. You have full authority. It's up to the ownership. But I will say this about the owners in the NBA. They're real wimps as far as backing their coaches. They give the GMs the power. The GMs don't want the coaches to get on the players too hard. That's why the players, as Pax says, they kind of run things. They get away with things. I don't care how big a star that player is. You talk back to the coach, you get sent to the bench over there. And what are you going to do about it as a player? You're going to say, trade me? And you want to know something? Ownership can then say, you have a contract. We're not trading you. If you want to retire, retire. Stay home. And if the player decides to stay home for a week or so because he's mad, you hold out. You call his bluff. You're not going anywhere. You could stay home the rest of the year. You're not getting paid. And guess what? Their agents, their friends, the player himself gets antsy. He comes back and he says, we better listen to him. Like in that movie, Hoosiers. Remember the one player that wouldn't listen to the coach? The coach let them know. The coach played with 4 players because one player disrespected him. And then he told him in the locker room, and the coach left after telling him what I says is the law around here. And the coach left. One of the other players says, we better just listen to him. They'll come around. It depends how much of a disciplinarian you are. I mean, if Becky Hammon is as qualified as a man, humping a woman shouldn't hold her back in the slightest.
Yeah, I just think that it's hard to change, the dynamics between a man and a woman, Jack. It's been that way forever. Your mom, what does your mom say when you get in trouble? Wait till your father gets home, right? Wait till
it depends on the family. It depends.
Wait till your father gets home, and he's going to take care of you. Because mom really didn't want. Moms are loving, Jack. They're not there to discipline you. That's your dads love you too, but it's a total different type of love. Your dad is there to teach you discipline. That's what it's.
The number of NBA players have grown up in one-parent households. I don't have a total, a percentage, but where the mom raised them and the mom was dominant, and they might be big shots, all over the place, out in the arena talking, wielding their power. But if mom showed up, they're like quiet. They know they're subservient. They're going to listen to her because of having a dominant personality there, which I think is a good, which is a good thing that they show that respect for the parent. Let me put it to Pags. If all of a sudden the Sixers moved on from Doc Rivers, and you wouldn't shed a tear if that happened, and Becky Hammon was named the coach, would it be any worse for the Sixers?
any worse for the Sixers.
I mean, could it actually get better for the Sixers? Let's say Becky Hammond, a woman, came on board. You think they, knowing the personalities on the Sixers, you think they tried to take advantage of it? She might stand up to Joel Embiid and tell him, Joel, you're not doing this, really get on him. And you want to know something? And maybe Joel Embiid will respect that and say, hey, she's trying to improve me and not feel threatened by it.
Yeah, I don't know that works. I don't. You know, I think about this. I think about Dawn Staley. Would Dawn Staley be able to? I mean, she's probably arguably one of the best women basketball players to ever play the game and is a Philadelphia native. I think she would have a difficult time coaching in the NBA.
Pat Summitt, who is a tough cookie. Pat Summitt, remember, she was one tough woman. I can't see any man.
Again, she did college. She did college and she did women's. So that's the difference. I think that she would have had they would have a difficult time. I think any woman is going to have a difficult time coaching men. Not because they are they're not qualified. I think that it's that, hey, listen, half of the job of being a coach in the NBA is managing the egos of these players. That is half the job. And I think that you are behind the 8 ball as a woman doing that portion of the job. You could be overqualified in every other position of that. But if you are not able to manage the egos, ultimately you're going to get overrun.
Yeah, I mean, maybe again, these women coaches you're mentioning become an assistant coach under head coaches. Maybe they can help out in that way as far as shooting the ball, passing the ball, and all the basics of basketball. But to be a head coach, I think is asking a lot of these women coming up to try to handle, as Pax said, the man's ego, the player's ego there, because again, it's like a mother with her child. I mean, she doesn't want to discipline their child. That's it's too bad. That's what the father gets stuck with doing, even though he doesn't like doing it.
But Mac, after a while, players don't really distinguish whether it's a man or woman. It's just their culture. Obviously, they're aware it's a woman, but they don't look at the coach as being a woman coach. They look at it as being a coach once you get used to that coach.
And I think maybe we're getting to the point. I think Jack has a point that we're getting to the point that this is a sea change. The Yankees obviously have Rachel Balkovec, who is the manager of their single A team. She managed them last year. I believe there's one other team that had a woman in Major League Baseball, major league coach. And I think we're getting to the point where people aren't really differentiating in that regard. They're going to say this person has been hired to be the leader of the team, and I'll listen to that person. I can't really speak to the NBA because I don't really follow it, but I see that as there's women referees in the NFL who get respect. So I think we're going to see a change there. So I think Jack might be onto something. The next question is an interesting one, and I'm going to expand it. And Jack's got to step out at this point, I think. But the question is, which fan base is more enthusiastic?
Hey, I'll see you guys. See you next week, fellas.
All right, Jack. Have a great day.
All right, Jack. Have a good one.
Which fan base is more enthusiastic, the Rangers or the Knicks? But you know what? Since this is the Northeast Streaming Sports Network, why don't we expand it a little bit and say, let's also throw in the 76ers and the Flyers and the Celtics and the Bruins. Is it more of a enthusiasm for basketball? Is it more of an enthusiasm for hockey? Is it city specific? Again, I don't really follow these sports, so I'm going to have to defer to the two experts here, the Philly sports guy and Mac. What do you think?
Well, Pags is more of a hockey guy than me. So Pags, why don't you start us off?
So when you're only putting those teams in the mix there, I would say that probably, the fans of hockey in Philadelphia are very loyal and passionate, but are not. I would say, without a doubt, that hockey is the number 4 sport in Philadelphia, and basketball takes the number 3 spot. Yeah, are they passionate about that? Yes, I think that Philadelphia, if you're a Philadelphia sports team, and you are giving it your all, and that all gets you close to a championship, that everybody is going to follow. They're going to watch and they're going to support. When it comes to New York, I think that they are much more fair weather in comparison. When the Rangers aren't good, and they don't have anybody in Madison Square Garden. The Knicks already proved there's nobody there watching, that there are a lot of empty seats. And I feel that, in Boston, different scenario, they have had a little bit more, again, they happen to be doing pretty well, so people are out there supporting more. But ultimately in Boston, you have the Reds, and then there's everybody else. So I think that
Pax, you're wrong about the Knicks fans. They're loyal. That arena's always sold out. It's been sold out since the championship years, and they haven't won anything there yet. So there's no empty seats in Madison Square Garden. If you want to say the most exciting in New York, the most exciting, the team that has the most exciting fans, it would be the Rangers. I mean, the fans go crazy for the Rangers there when they're winning. And the most loyal fans are the Knicks fans. They, like I said, they've been there forever. Their prices are crazy to go watch a game there, even though they're losing. So if we're just sticking with New York, Ranger fans more excited and the Knicks fans more loyal.
All right. So good questions there. Let's move out of, Carlos is talking about Linsanity, which was probably about 10 years ago already. Time flies when you think about some of these things that just hit us in sports and we get so excited about them. And then the next thing you know, they're gone. Who is, let me just make sure the question is, it's all of sports. Who do you feel is the best broadcaster in all of sports? I'll go first on this one because I think my answer is going to shock everybody because he's not a big name broadcaster, but he really actually began on WFAN and he's worked his way up and he's really doing every sport now. I have to be honest, I'm not a big fan of most of the baseball announcers. I love John Sterling, but for most of the guys you hear during the games, they're okay. I don't have anything against them. They're not great, but I love listening to the football announcers. And my favorite guy was Al Michaels. I thought Al Michaels was great. And I loved him with Chris Collinsworth. I thought that was a great team. But the guy whose voice I'm most happy to hear on a game now is Ian Eagle. Ian Eagle calls a great game. He really is an outstanding announcer, and I think he's going to be the big announcer going forward. So if I had to pick who my favorite broadcaster is, even though he might not be the biggest name out there, the guy I'm enjoying the most right now is Ian Eagle. What do you guys think?
Well, I mean, if you're going to go in history of
no, I think it's currently.
Right. But if you were, you'd have to say John Madden, right? I mean, he would be the pick of
Madden and Summerall was something special, no doubt.
Yeah, it was. Today, I like the Moose. I like the Dallas Cowboy former fullback Moose Johnson. I don't know if anybody's ever heard him call a game or not out there, but really he's the analyst. But I mean, he's not a homer. He's not like Troy Aikman with the Dallas Cowboys. He's not a homer, and I mean he does a great job. He's normally on the Giant game, so that's why I get a chance to see him more than the others. I guess you could might be able to throw former Dallas Cowboy quarterback, not Troy Aikman, but number 9, Pags. I can't remember his name. Number 9 for the Dallas Cowboys.
Romo.
Yeah. He does a fairly good job too. But if I'm going to pick one, I'll go with Moose Johnson.
All right, Pax. If you're listening to a game, best broadcaster can't be Bill Baldwin and Stu Nahan. They call the Rocky fights, but you got to pick somebody else.
No, so and I think when I think about that, and so you said Ian Eagle on Westwood Sports. Is that his guy? Is that his name? The guy who
Ian Eagle,
does
yeah.
the calls for Westwood One. I mean, where he's able to you've heard him when there was the cat on the fields, and he was talking about the cat, like he was literally he could. Yeah, like he's the streakers running down and put your clothes on, man. You know what I mean? I love listening to that guy's voice talk about a game, and he's just so articulate in terms of being able to explain what's going on so that you can visually see on the radio. And that's I kind of love when somebody's able to do that. I don't know if that's Iron Eagle. I don't think that it is. I think that it's somebody else that's able to do that. But I mean, he is, and he's usually doing it for Westwood One, and he's got a very distinguished voice, distinguishable voice.
I think I know who you're talking about. I can't think of his name either. He's got a real deep voice, right, Pags?
Yeah, it's kind of. I'm actually looking at him.
And I think he describes the game in between the numbers. I mean, the quarterback takes a snap. He really paints a picture of the entire game.
Yeah, and I was, and then I think of those what was his name, Jackson, for college. Like he just had that southern drawl to him.
Keith Jackson did a good job.
Yeah, he was one of the best that I can think of. And then when I think of baseball, I mean, I think guys that could possibly have been that, been good. Like I like Buck's dad, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I thought really good. After listening,
He used to do football with Hank Stram, as I recall.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
On the radio. I think I listened to some football games in the 80s with Jack Buck and Hank Stram.
Yep.
Might have been one of those big 49er games, as I'm thinking back, when maybe even the Dwight Clark catch. They might have called that game. Those guys were phenomenal.
Yeah. And I mean, if you want to, this is not past, but if you're going to talk about the past announcer, maybe the most controversial, Howard Cosell, right? I mean, the halftime, highlights in that he was quite the character.
Yeah, and he really changed the way broadcasting was used. It'd be great to have Jack for that because, of course, of Howard Cosell's relationship with boxers and his relationship with boxing, especially Muhammad Ali. But, he became
Kevin Harlan.
Kevin Harlan is who you're thinking of? All right. So he became
Kevin Harlan.
The guy who maybe the first real national broadcaster to catch everybody's attention. There were a couple episodes of The Odd Couple that Howard Cosell was on.
Yeah.
He transcended sports and worked his way into, regular TV. I mean, everybody knew Howard Cosell and they knew Howard Cosell's voice. Everybody who used to try to do their own little Howard Cosell imitations. So that's a great point.
Yeah.
So
but when I think of that, Kevin Harlan's my guy.
All right, so Kevin Harlan, Dick Enberg is another guy Chris Lentz brought up. These are big time names. It'd be interesting to see if any of the current guys become that big. Again, one of the names, he's not a play-by-play guy, and I really do think Chris Collinsworth does a great job. I enjoy the way he explains a football game as a color
Yeah, you
guy.
couldn't explain that to anybody in Philadelphia, though. I think he's a Philadelphia hater, and he kind of does that a lot. He's trying to turn that around. He's trying to get Philadelphia love, but he's not there yet. So he won't be very enjoyed in Philly most of the time.
That's interesting. And you know what? That's actually a great question because I think when you are a fan of a team, we tend to think of some of the other announcers as against our team. Yankee fans tend to think that John Smoltz hates the Yankees. Now, I don't know if he does or not. How do I know? But when John Smoltz calls a national game, you see a lot of comments about, Smoltz hates the Yankees. Smoltz hates the Yankees. And then people think Jack Buck. Isn't that the younger guy? What's his name? The younger Buck. Anyway, he hates the Yankees.
Joe Buck, I think. Is it Joe Buck?
Joe Buck.
Yeah, he hates the Yankees. He's against the Yankees, blah, blah, blah. So I think sometimes we tend to feel like the guy who's not our guy calling for the national game is saying bad stuff about our own team, which is interesting. Some of it's probably true, maybe not. So, of course, in baseball, we're now in the free agency period, and the biggest free agent guy is Aaron Judge, and that's going to play itself out. And we've talked that a lot, and we'll continue to talk about that. But today is not the Aaron Judge day. The question Jack posed to us is, outside of Aaron Judge, besides him, who is the best, biggest free agent who's out there who's going to be the guy that commands the most money or the biggest chance to change a team? What do you guys think?
I think it probably will be Verlander. It would be DeGrom, but I think he gets injured too much. So, pitching always beats hitting, and I've seen some Facebook posts. Of course, don't believe what you read with Facebook, but supposedly they're going after Verlander, the Yankees. If they do get him, that will add, then they'll have two aces, right? You'll have Verlander probably number one, and then you'll have
Garrett Cole.
Garrett Cole probably number two. And what a staff that would be. I mean, you think about the pitching last year, the Yankees, they were all pretty good. Severino, Nasty Nestor, these guys were all spinning it out there last year and pitched very well for the Yankees. So I would imagine it would be Verlander. I'm not sure who the hitter would be. I don't know who you could lure away. There's been talk about Ohtani coming to the Yankees. I don't think I don't think he'll come here. And that Japanese batter, Doc, we talked about him coming in.
I'd have to look up his name. He is like Andrew Benintendi with a little more power.
Yes, and we talked about him before the season started. We were hoping the Yankees would go after him, and they didn't. And it looks like they may. I think he signed a 1-year deal, if I'm not mistaken, with the Yankees. Again, Facebook, Doc. I'm just Facebook.
No, he's out there. He's. I don't even think he's posted.
Yeah,
yet.
actually, from what I understand, that he's tied a little bit to the Phillies. That his favorite player of all time is obviously Harper. So there is some tie to him that when asked where he wanted to play with his idol.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Which again, you know what? The fact that the Yankees didn't sign Bryce Harper comes back to bite him again and again and again. I wanted that. I mean, that was like, it was so perfect. There was never anything more perfect. And then the Yankees blew it on that. And I talk about it all the time, so I won't continue on that. Philly sports guy, who do you think is the biggest free agent out there that's not Aaron Judge?
Chris kind of stole my thunder. I thought Trey Turner. Trey Turner is the guy that's going to really. I think that the problem with pitching is that when you're going after a 40-year-old pitcher, you're getting a 40-year-old pitcher, and it doesn't matter how great he is. Same thing with DeGrom. DeGrom is, arguably the best pitcher in baseball. But there again, you have to say when he's healthy. So is it, can you rely on the age of the pitching, the pitcher that you're getting to be able to create longevity? I think that no, it forces you more to have to turn towards Trey Turner or Bogarts or like one of those everyday players that is going to produce in 154 games out of the 162 rather than the 30 starts that somebody's getting. And the other thing that I have not really heard a lot of is closers. Closers are really, really at a premium. And, I haven't heard of any big name closers that are out there.
Diaz, he signed with the Mets, right? That was the big guy.
Well, and I didn't even think that he was like, I think that they kept him because he was able to give them a little bit of a hometown discount. Truth of the matter is that he was the best of a really bad bunch. I mean, there isn't closers out there, and there's none. So if you were able to get a closer right now, or somebody who could fill into that role would be worthwhile, but there isn't one out there.
Don't the Dodgers have a few pitchers that are on the
Chapman
block?
does not count. Chapman is not a good closer there, Chris.
Okay. Don't the Dodgers have a couple starting pitchers that are out there that could be gotten, Doc? I mean,
I think the Angels signed one of them, and Kershaw is going to re-sign or has already with the Dodgers. So
right.
I'm going to agree with Pags. I think the biggest guys out there, and Mac Verlander. I think he could be a game changer if the Yankees decided to go after him, because that would make their rotation super formidable in the playoffs. And I think that's been part of the Yankees' problem. Really not that their pitching has been bad. It's really that they haven't hit. But I think there becomes a lot of pressure on the hitters when you're not quite 100% certain that your pitchers are going to keep you in every game. And the fact that they do basically do that, I think, is irrelevant to the fact that I think if you have a guy like Verlander starting, it just helps you out. You got Verlander 1, Cole game 2, Nestor game 3. That looks like a good way to win a playoff series. And that's where the Yankees' problems have been. I think the Yankees could probably make the playoffs. But again, I think Trey Turner and Xander Bogaerts are two of the big other names. So let's revisit a thing we talked about an hour ago. And we're not going to make it the Billy Buckner, would he have beat Mookie Wilson to the bag? Let's think about a bigger situation. You are a coach. You can pick the sport. It can be, any of our sports here, baseball, basketball, football, hockey, whatever. And your team is about to win a big game, a World Series game, a Super Bowl game, a playoff game, or whatever. And you have the veteran, like Billy Buckner. Billy Buckner was the veteran. They had Dave Stapleton, who was the defensive replacement, who could fill in for him. But as a manager, John McNamara said, you know what? I want my guys on the field. I want the guys who deserve to be there, who've carried us this far, to be there. And then it didn't work out. When do you decide to put the defensive specialist in or the backup guy in to replace the guy who was there for you for a long time, the veteran presence, and risk having what happened to the Red Sox in that situation, that a feeble guy lets the ball go through his legs? Put yourself in that situation. Would you have put Billy Buckner out there? Or would you have taken him out? Hindsight's 20/20. Or can you think of a different situation where you would have let the guy be the running back in a big play, even if his skills weren't quite as much as the guy who was behind him? What do you think? Can you think of a scenario like that?
I think the Phillies back in the 70s was leaving out Greg Luzinski in left field. I think against the Astros, and wound up losing the game because of it, because he wasn't really able to make the play. I think that it happens a lot more frequently. I think that if you even go back to the NFL last year and the fact that they put Henry in there, who was probably not the best suited for the job that they needed him to do. And because of that, they wound up losing that game, because he couldn't make the play, because he was not 100%, and I think that could have been other decisions that were made that didn't put it on his shoulders when he wasn't 100%. So I think it happens a lot more frequently than not.
I think it has to do a little bit with injury. I think it has a little bit to do with experience. I mean, I look, you like Tom Brady. So if you look at Tom Brady with Drew Bledsoe, when Bledsoe got hurt and they put Brady in, and even when Bledsoe got better, they left Brady in, and he took him to the Super Bowl, minus that championship game that Bledsoe actually won the game for him on a touchdown pass. I think that you've got to go with your gut. We don't go with the coaches really don't go with their guts anymore. They use them analytics. Sometimes it works, sometimes it don't. But if I'm looking at, for example, another example for you, Giants had Phil Simms and Jeff Hostetler. Simms, of course, was the better throwing quarterback. Hostetler could run with the ball better than Simms. He got hurt in the beginning of the year, again, another injury. And Hostetler helped guide the Giants to the Super Bowl, even though Sims might have been able to play in that Super Bowl. But Parcells stuck with the game plan that he had and let Hostetler, help lead him to a Super Bowl. So I think it has a lot to do with the situation, injuries, and coaches going with their gut. So those would probably be my best two examples of when you should or should not pull a player.
How about we? Just as you guys are talking, I just want to make sure I get the name right. And now that I'm talking, I don't have quite enough chance to check it. The Jets Super Bowl in 1969, right? The Jets obviously had Joe Namath, but they playing the Colts, and Earl Morrall, I believe, was their quarterback.
Right.
And the guy on the bench was Johnny Unitas, right? The great Johnny Unitas, who comes in, I believe, in the second half at some point, if not the whole second half.
Yeah.
Like when do you go to the old veteran and see if he can't rally you to victory or have him on the field? Or so it's a great question. So let's just put us all in that situation. We're in the dugout. We're the Red Sox manager. You've got Billy Buckner. It's a tie game. It's the 10th inning. Would you have put Billy Buckner on the field?
I would have. I mean, I again, as we spoke before, this guy's been around for a long time, played a great outfield, all-star caliber. He, he's a borderline Hall of Famer, and I hope he gets in, despite of that play, which he'll probably, this guy's got to be reminded of this all the time. I mean, he sees the videos and of that play constantly. But I I would have kept him on, and I would have lost the game. And I would have lived with it because of what he'd done for baseball and what he did for the Red Sox, while he was there. Not much, but he did make himself famous with the ball going between his legs.
What do you think, Pags? Would you have put Billy Buckner out there, or would you have pulled him?
Well, I think the fact that they were tied and they wanted his bat.
That's a good point too.
So I don't think that they really had as much of a choice. If they had the lead and that happened, it going through his legs was the winning run, correct?
Yes,
but they were up one run, correct?
I believe so.
They
going
were up
into
one
the
run,
10th,
and that was the second run scored in that inning. So that was the winning run, but they had let up another run in the process of that. If that's the case, I would have pulled them. If you're up by a run in the 10th inning, and the Mets come back and score 2 in that inning, then I would have absolutely pulled him, because who cares if he's on the field or if he's in the clubhouse that he celebrates? He celebrates. And you were at that point 82 years away from the last time you won a championship, or 72 years away from the last time you won a championship. So you had to do it. It's like it was something that you want the championship, and you're not really worrying about the ego of, he's out on the field to celebrate. He's going to run out in the field the moment they win anyways.
You mentioned his bat. Suppose you keep him in and he hits a 3-run homer and you win the game.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. Like, it's, again, it depends on if they went into the 10th inning tied, they did not, then you have to keep his bat in the lineup. If they have the lead going into the bottom half of the 10th, then you have to pull him. And because you have to expect that you're going to win that game. Not, if it's tied, then you absolutely have to keep his bat in the lineup.
Okay.
And I think that's
right?
the answer.
But the question is, does the player belong on the field? I think you make the biggest point there, Pags, which is the idea that it's not about the ego of any one player. It's about putting the best guys on the field who you feel as the manager are going to make sure that in that last half inning, get you those 3 outs so you win the world championship. All right, so we had about 15 minutes.
But if you're in the lead, you can do that. If you're not in the lead, you have to think about the 11th inning now.
That is correct.
So,
absolutely.
So that's why you're forced to keep him in there if that's the case.
So let's end today with one other audible question. And Mac was talking about Tom Brady before. The Buccaneers got off to a terrible start, but their last 2 games they've won, including the big game out there in Munich. They beat the Rams, and then they just beat the Seahawks. They have the bye this week, but they've now won 2 in a row. The record is 5-5 in a weak division. Are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers back?
No, they're not back yet. They've got a lot of work to do. Their defense isn't playing well. They can't run the ball. Their receivers are dropping the ball. There's no consistency, with the team. Tom Brady has been playing better the last 2 games, but that's mainly been in between the 20s. I mean, he's driving the team down the field, but they're really not scoring. So, I mean, that's, what does that do for the team? I think that Tom Brady, if he was in a position, say in the playoffs, he could make that big play. He could make that big play. But I think the other team would come back because their defense ain't playing well, Doc.
What do you think, Pags?
I think FTX is the problem with Tom Brady, and that ultimately he is got his mind elsewhere. He's getting divorced. He invested in something ridiculous, and now it fell apart. That's the reason why he's playing. That's probably the reason why he's got divorced. He's getting divorced. I'm sure that has a lot to play with the fact, besides the fact that Giselle had a boyfriend for a little while anyways. But these are, I think that he's got too many other things in his head. And because of that, they are, they're going to probably make it in the playoffs because they are the best of a bad bunch. And he'll be out in the first round.
And you can't have consistency if Tom Brady's not going to make practices, right? In the beginning of the year, he doesn't go to practice. He's getting every Wednesday off. I mean, you can't develop that consistency with your wide receivers if you decide that, you don't want to practice.
Agreed. So I don't think that they are, they're not back, and they're not going to be back.
I don't think so either.
And I think the one thing that you can be sure of is that Tom Brady will be back next year.
Definitely.
You're thinking he's lost a lot of money in the FTX thing?
Oh, I think he lost a ton of money. Before I thought it was just the thing, and then I found out all the stuff with this FTX and followed that some. And
I haven't heard about that. What is that? What is the FTX?
FTX is a crypto currency exchange that had $13 billion, was worth $13 billion, and literally overnight went to zero.
Wow.
Actually went to negative $8 billion because the guy who was the CEO was using the money for the deposits of his investors into his exchange to fund a bad hedge fund that he owned on the other side. So it was really a lot of him being very shady with other people's money that he wasn't allowed to do. So that's the big deal. That's, similar to Schilling investing all that money into that video game and it falling apart. Same thing with Tom Brady. That it's coming out that this was a very big Ponzi scheme. And
I didn't know anything about that till now. Okay.
Yeah, millions of dollars and billions of dollars have been.
Amazing stuff. Hey, let's end the show. I'm going to give a shout out to our good friend Mac here. Tell a little story. Mac brought me in to do these shows and be a guest on the Mac and Jack debate show. And then he said, I'd like you to come more often. Could you come for 15 minutes? We would do a little Yankee talk. Then it became a half an hour, et cetera, et cetera. Now, of course, it's the whole show. And that's been now for a couple of years. But way back in the very beginning of all this, Mac had said, you know what? I might be able to get former Yankee great Roy White on to do a podcast with us. Would you be available to do that? And we made some time. At the last minute, some schedules got changed, and then I wasn't able to do that podcast. But I said to Mac, please talk to Roy White for me. Let him know I'm a writer, and that I would love to have the opportunity to talk to him about writing his autobiography. And Mac did just that. Talk to Roy White, and then put Roy White and I in communication with each other. Roy and I then have spent the last year working together on his autobiography. It's called From Compton to the Bronx. It's going to come out next April. It's phenomenal. I've been sending it out to all sorts of writers for blurbs and reviews for marketing purposes. Everyone's coming back just glowing, saying, what a great story. And 2 nights ago on Thursday night, Roy White also heads a thing called the Roy White Foundation, where they give scholarships to help college freshmen pay for a lot of the things that college freshmen have to pay for: books, computers, all those early expenses that people just don't have the money for. And the Roy White Foundation had a kickoff event after a couple of years because of COVID, where they hadn't been as active. We did that Thursday night, and it was great. You can see that I was the moderator of the event. Roy White was there. You can see in the picture. He talked to the audience. We had a live auction. We had a silent auction of all sorts of great memorabilia, and it was great. So all because of Mac, a book has now been written. There was an event. There's going to be another event in April to support the foundation, and all sorts of people are getting all sorts of benefits because of Mac and the connections he made and the kindness he had and the way that he deals with other people. Because, if Mac wasn't such a good guy, and Roy White wouldn't have come on the show. If Mac wasn't such a good guy and he said, listen, I got this other guy who can't talk to you today, would you want to talk to him? Roy White probably would have said, no, go far away from me. But because Mac is just this great person, all these connections were made. And I just want to say to Mac, thank you for making those connections and for making this all possible. We owe a lot to you.
Thank you, Doc. I mean, listen, I've been a Roy White fan. He was my first hero. Way back when I started watching baseball, and I mean, you're a great man. I love having you on, the show and the debate show, and of course you're doing your little podcast there. But yeah, I mean, listen, Roy White has a story to tell, like a lot of people do, but his is a little different, in segregation and coming up in the minors and playing through a lot of bad years the Yankees had. I mean, they were at the bottom of the league, and he was the bright spot of that team. And batting behind Mickey Mantle. I mean, the story goes on, and I'm glad to see he's doing great. I mean, I really like the guy. So thanks a lot, Doc. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right, I guess that wraps us up for today. Pags, what's your big activity sports-wise today? What are you doing?
You know what? My whole group went to Notre Dame today, so I decided I have a day off in another city.
Well, listen,
so
you enjoy that day off. Rest up, because I'm sure there's some big sporting events in your future, obviously, like every day.
Eagles tomorrow.
All right, my friends, thank you for tuning in to the Mac, not Jack right now, and Doc and Pag's Saturday debate show. The Mac and Jack show will be back right here tomorrow, 8 a.m. Count on more great football talk for the big football show. Have yourselves a wonderful day.